The Iranian protests have exploded across the country. Right now in Iran, in over 100 cities, there are protests ongoing. Currently, I see people spreading on social media the idea that cities have essentially fallen to the protesters, that there's so many protesters that they can no longer control the situation. The son of the former royal family of Iran has called for people to go out on the street. Some are chanting slogans in favor of the man, calling for them to go on the street, the royals. Many others are just throwing out anti-regime slogans because not everybody is gonna want back the royal family. A lot of people don't. There's also other people just giving general slogans, since the origin of these protests did come from economic issues, did come from the explosion of prices, the currency collapse, inflation. But where do all these issues lie? At the center, at the government, at a government that has been unable to reform, not only under foreign pressure and with a lot of resources going abroad to prop up the Syrian government that has now collapsed, to support the Houthis, to support militias in Iraq, to support Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. In order to do the power politics that they do in the region, that costs a lot of money. And that's at the same time that the local government has been unable to give everybody consistent access to electricity. That there is a growing water crisis in a country that has not managed the water that they have well when it comes to its irrigation systems and what type of crop rotations they do, what crops they choose to irrigate, and how intensive they are on the water supply versus the basic water needs of the people in an area where if the water crisis continues to get worse, not only in Iran, but globally, Iran will be a country that will be hard hit. And if they're already having problems keeping electricity on, if they're already having problems stopping the currency from collapsing, if they're already having problems trying to stop inflation, this is an issue that's going to grow as well. And so my issue is, from the outside, it's hard for me to see how the regime is going to offer, I use the political word regime, how they're going to offer anything to the protesters that can dissuade them. I've seen the offer of some small handouts, like a small amount of capital. I saw the reports headline $7 a month. I don't think something like that, even if they double or triple that, is going to assuage concerns, or anything that they can't offer right now is going to, if it even achieves that, going to be able to do it for more than a short period of time, because the problems they have are institutional. It's not like, we've been able to stop the currency from actively collapsing for now. It's just going to be moving from crisis to crisis to crisis. It's going to be electricity crisis. Then you rotate to the water crisis. And the government doesn't have the administrative skill in order to deal with all these crises at the same time and fix them. And as you see basic services break down more, this is only a problem that's going to continue to grow. And so if the government can reform, then maybe they can deal better with the electricity crisis. Maybe they can deal better with the water crisis and how they manage their limited water supply in an arid region. Maybe they can deal with issues of corruption. Maybe they can deal with managing the limited budget. Maybe they can deal with public sentiment when it comes to the religious police that enforce. I'm going to be honest with you, because this is my perspective. Archaic values when it comes to how a woman should and should not be allowed, not should, but should be allowed to display her own body at her choosing, or what her position in society may generally be. So I don't think they have the ability to reform due to the coalition that supports the government in power, and just due to the lack of skills. And so that's the problem I find myself at. I'm not saying that it's impossible, that if there were shifts up there, or it's like kind of an internalized regime, I can't know everything, but I don't see any of the moves happening. And so as the protests expand, and we've seen fatalities with over 29 people dead, over 100 cities now inflamed through protest, the Trump administration has said, if the government keeps killing protesters, we're going to go in and we're going to intervene. Now, Trump said this once, and I said, I don't know if this is him trying to have an influence and repress response without really having anything behind it, trying to see how far his Venezuelan black bagging of Maduro can have wave, like onset, like long ending effects on other conflicts and intimidate global powers to maybe make them back off, essentially. But I didn't know if he would really go through with it. And I still don't really know how he would go through with it, or what he would do if he went through with it. I think now he has said it so many times, because he's repeated it since then, that it'd be very difficult for him to back off without losing credibility, without not only embarrassing himself, which is, of course, a crisis for Trump, but also undermining the credibility of the United States after making so many claims that if you keep killing protesters, we're going to do X, Y, and Z. People remember Obama's red line and the fact that it was crossed, and then Barack Obama didn't do anything, and then the Syrian civil war lasted for 13 years, right? People remember that. Trump doesn't want that on him. Trump doesn't want inaction on him after promising bold action. It already looks pretty bad for Ukraine. The majority of Americans don't think he's doing a good job when it comes to resolving the war. The polling is clear. I mean, even a majority of Republicans, people who are behind him, don't have a lot of faith that he's going to be able to end this war, or at least in the medium to short term, because there doesn't seem to be an end in sight, even as negotiations are lauded as making essentially a gargantuan progress. Each day, we find out a new way to describe past 90% towards success for the last 6 to 7 months. I don't know how you can be at 9. If I tried to load up a game or load up anything and it was at 90% there, and then it just stood there for like 6 to 7 months, start to get a little suspicious. I think I would either get a new system, or I would maybe return to the manufacturer. Either way, Donald Trump, he is currently threatening these strikes, and after continuing to threaten these strikes, I think he's kind of boxed himself in. And it's not like the regime will be unwilling to use force if they think that the question is either the collapse of their regime and the collapse or the collapse of the power structure, or the systems that keep the regime in power and stop dissent that could erode what they think are fundamental parts of the Islamic Revolution, or what keeps the Islamic Revolution in power, whether it be the religious police, whether it be the hold the IRGC has on society, or whether it be the power of the clerical elite, any of this. And so if it gets to that point and the protests are only expanding, what is the Trump administration going to do? Let me read to you what the Iranian supreme leader is saying about the protests as Trump has thrown himself into the equation. European leaders urge Iran late on Friday to allow its citizens to demonstrate without reprisal after Tehran signaled security forces would crack down on the protesters whom the U.S. President Donald Trump has pledged to support. At least the last number I read was 29. The number now, as of today, is 62. So it is escalating. At least 62 people have been killed in the protests that began in late December over Iran's ailing economy and have morphed into the most significant challenge to the government in years. Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei dismissed Trump as having hands stained with the blood of Iranians, as the supporters shouted death to America, and footage aired by Iranian state television. There is pro-government protests. I have seen pro-government protests. I saw a decent amount of people there, but nothing that seemed to be comparable to the size and the scale of the anti-government protests that are going on right now. But that's not to say that that's the entire country. State media later referred to the demonstrators as terrorists, setting the stage for a violent crackdown as in other protests in recent years. Protesters are, and I quote, and this is from the leader, ruining their own streets in order to please the President of the United States. Now, this framing from Khamenei, it might help in his eyes because you're tying Donald Trump's open alignment with the protest movement in protection of them, or at least sane in protection of them, also for America's interest, but sane in protection of them, tying that to the protesters to discredit them as anti-Iranian, as anti-government. And that You know, that might help the hardliners. If you're in the IRGC and then you hear that from the president of the United States and then your supreme leader connects it to those protests, it might help you entrench yourself. But for those who are on the street, for those who are protesting, for a lot of people who are ailing right now, I don't think that's going to help. If you're somebody who is maybe not feeling the pain as much and you hear something like that and you have the maneuverability to say, well, you know what? I don't like that Donald Trump, I'm suspicious because of what Donald Trump is saying. That it might be able to be a convincing argument. What's a more convincing argument is hunger. What's a more convincing argument is desolation of your bank account. Is 50% of your savings being destroyed in a year just through currency collapse and rapid inflation. So whether or not Donald Trump says he supports these protests, and I do think the president of the United States coming out and saying, oh, I will defend this, I will do that, can have both a positive and negative impact depending on the situation. And in this case, I don't see how it necessarily has a direct positive impact at this stage. We will see as time goes on. I'm very suspicious of how the government can use that to try to discredit the protests, which it is now doing. And unless Donald Trump can find a way to protect the protesters on the ground, which he can't, he is essentially saying, look, I will bomb stuff. You'd handle the rest. But what happens when bombing stuff might not be enough? So unless you are willing to go really, really far, you could essentially be asking people to throw their life on the line, thinking that they're going to get the support of the United States in defense of their country. You throw some air salvos, but the IRGC is still deeply embedded in society. And after seeing what the president of the United States did in Venezuela, removing Nicolas Maduro, but not the regime around him that represents Chavismo, what are you going to think as an Iranian? What are you going to think? Are you going to trust that he's going to come out and he's going to really stick his neck out for you? Or is he going to stick his neck out for what's under your feet or for something that profits the United States? I mean, they say, a stable democratic Iran would be beneficial to the United States. The people who want that are well embedded in Washington. But they also said something very similar when it comes to Venezuela. And so I do think how Donald Trump is portraying himself on the world stage right now is going to undermine his ability to even represent this outstretched hand without being basically portrayed as, the devil himself. So one other thing the Iranian government has done is cut off the internet, trying to see if that can suppress the different calls for protest across the country. Another thing that has been done, I don't think this is going to be as helpful, by the way, is that on Twitter, they changed the flag for Iran, the emoji. You can see that on top here, that's the flag of the Islamic Republic of Iran. That's the flag that the government took after the royal family was overthrown by the Islamic Revolution. You can see that the emoji, which was on the, of course, their official Ministry of Foreign Affairs page, has been changed to represent the old flag of Iran. That was the flag of Iran until the 1979 revolution under the Shah. So I think that's the final straw. That's the final straw. That will be the straw that breaks the camel's back. I will say that the internet shutdown has not stopped the protests. The protests are continuing, for the record.